Welcome to Creator Shop Talk. I'm Darren, and today I want to look back at my interview with Mike Moynihan to clarify a couple of things that I had been talking about in the video that I didn't do a very good job of, because I have a difficult time with communication. And normally when I do videos, I spend a long time prepping them and really making sure that I know what I'm going to be saying. And I mean, in this case, I've been spending basically 2 days working through it, trying to get this video done. And in an interview, you don't have the ability to do that. And so I tend to get things pretty well garbled up. I really didn't intend to talk as much as I did in that interview, but at any rate, there were a few things that I really wanted to clarify, because in one case, there's, I think, potential confusion of my message, and in another one, there's a great opportunity that I just dropped the ball and never bothered to really prepare to talk about. So there are three main points that I really want to cover. And I'm not going to be talking about any of the things that Mike said, because that's really not fair to him, because he doesn't have the ability to talk about, to clarify what he was thinking. It's not right to do that. So I'm just going to talk about the things that I said that I don't think I communicated very well, but I think I should clean up. The first one is related to, at one point early in the interview, I made a reference to Mr. Mangini's channel in terms of the way that some of these channels can come across. And it is possible for people to misread that as my possibly viewing it as like a sub-tier channel or something like that. That was not my intent. I actually have a lot of respect for his channel and fellow hobbyists who, so here's the thing. YouTube is one of the forms of social media. And it's easy to forget about the ability for there to be a casual conversational quality to YouTube, which is something you see more in like Facebook. The YouTube is normally thought of in one of two ways. Either one, like cat videos and epic fail videos, which is the America's Funniest Home Video kind of a concept, which is really more the early days. And then there are also pretty well produced videos that are out there that have had a lot of production time, a lot of preparation. And if your only interface with YouTube is with those types of videos, and you stumble upon somebody who's just sitting around talking with friends in a single path type of a way, that's not, if you don't understand what that is, it's easy to totally misconstrue what it is. And that was my experience, where I had always been used to watching YouTube videos where there was preparation done beforehand. There was some sort of production value that went into it. And seeing somebody just sitting around and talking, I had to shift my mindset to understand it. And once I did, I realized it's a really valuable tool. Because look, I started my channel, The Sports Card Professor. I started that channel because all of this information about sports cards is out there. People know it. It's just not coalesced. And so I wanted to bring it together. And that's really what these channels do, is it provides people with the ability to present the information that they know about cards. And it's great that it's actually getting out there. Now, it is a bit challenging, again, for somebody who doesn't understand what they're looking at when they come in. And that was the point that I was trying to make. There's nothing wrong with it. Nothing needs to be changed. It's just that there is a dialogue discrepancy between the audience and the presenter that the audience just needs to get in the groove with. And once they do, everything's great. But this kind of leads into a second point that I had, which was regarding different forms of social media. Now, when at one point in the conversation, Mike said this about this topic.
If I'm walking around a show, let's say the National, big show, right? 100,000 people in the room. There might be 200 of them that know who I am. That's a very small percentage of a very large hobby, right? So my maximum audience is very small. And of the 100,000 people that are there, maybe 10,000 of them care about what I like to some degree. Maybe not as at least to some level where the content might be interesting. But we got to remember, not everybody watches YouTube. Not everybody's on Instagram. There's cross-pollination across these platforms. But the reality is, I know people that are huge on Instagram that have never watched a sports card YouTube video and probably couldn't even tell you that there was such a thing, right?
And the idea that there is, a card show full of people who are, just about everybody in that card show is on some form of social media, but they're in different forms. They're on Facebook, or they are on Instagram, or they used to be on TikTok, or they're in on YouTube, or they're in podcasts, or they're in chat rooms or blogs, or all of these different places where you can be involved in a social media type of an environment. But we're all kind of partitioned off where we're on one or two of those at a time, and we're not usually on more. And so there's a lack of fluidity between the different spaces. We all like to look back at the 1980s and remember when there were just 3 channels where we weren't watching the same show, but we were watching shows from the same pool. And so we all related to it. But in sports cards, we all had Beckett, and we had Tough Stuff, and maybe Sports Collector or Sports Card Digest. Or for the most part, we all gathered around certain places where information came from, and it gave a common dialogue and a common experience. Now that we have our ability to tuck into corners all over the place, it breaks that bond, but at the same time, it also alters it, because the way that we used to be at that time was we would have major outlets like that, and the traveling card show would make information travel around the country, but most of what we knew about cards came from our communities. Community, that was the main dialogue point. And while we were coalesced there, we didn't have a cross-national conversation that worked really well. Now it's the exact opposite. I'm here in the LA area, and there are people right now watching this who are in New England. So we have the national and international dialogue going, but what we're lacking is a tight-knit community. And I don't know how to solve the problem of having these different forms of social media that have people kind of broken apart, but there are a lot of great resources and opportunities that are tucked into different places that it would be nice to be able to connect in some way and make available. Like in my own case, my channel I think would work very well for people who are not in YouTube, but they don't know it exists. And they're not going to know it exists, because if you go onto YouTube and you type in sports cards, what are you going to see? You're not going to see any hobbyist channels. You're not going to see any of the mail day PSA reveals. Instead, what you're mostly going to see is the money channels and the breaker channels. And you're going to see some hot topic channels as well. That's what you're going to see, because YouTube is not built to cater to us. It's built to cater to people who want to sit around and watch entertainment, and that stuff absolutely fits the bill. So if somebody comes in to YouTube looking to find out what's on YouTube about sports cards, they're not going to see the core areas, because of the channels that show up, almost none of them talk about cards themselves. They're card adjacent, but they're not dedicated to cards. You got to get focused and look for, 1996 SPX baseball. And if you get focused, you might tunnel into a channel that happens to cover that topic. Although ironically, I have not done that video yet. But it's difficult for somebody on the outside to really see what's going on in YouTube. Part of that relates to how well do they interpret the videos that they do stumble upon, but the other thing is how likely are they to even stumble onto a video that is meaningful. It's difficult to figure it out in YouTube. Now, I did have an idea at one point that I almost tried to figure out how to pitch to YouTube until I realized it wouldn't work, which is to create sub-genres. So the idea is that we have different kinds of channels. There are the current events channels, there are the money channels, there are the box breaker channels, there's the hobbyists, there's the mail day PSA reveals, and then there are a couple of others that are not really well categorized. So that you could create a bunch of different categories, but the problem is, well, what is the difference between a box breaker and a box rip? A box rip is a little bit closer to a hobbyist, or it's a little bit closer to a mail day channel, but then those are very similar to hobbyists. And then you have Jeff Wilson, who is transitioning into, or he's trying to transition into current events and hobby type related content. And then we probably all remember how Dustin has handled people who criticized him for not being a hobbyist. There is a lot of confusion. And so in order to do something like that, which would wonderfully give the ability within YouTube to actually see different aspects of a subject a lot more clearly, I think that'd be a wonderful idea. You'd have to have somebody policing it, because we all have a different perspective on ourselves than those around us. And so we all would say, I'm totally this, I'm totally that. Well, we're not necessarily that way. And so as much as I would love to find a way to structure into YouTube a little bit more clarity about hobby spaces like ours, or I don't know, My Little Pony fans, or Star Wars fans, or Marvel fans, or James Bond channel fans, those types of areas would really do well to have some subcategories within it, but I don't know that it would work very well. And that reverts back to a point where I absolutely blew it in my interview, which was the idea of having some sort of a place where we can see the different kinds of channels that are out there. Now, I don't know if it would work best to have like a whole bunch of reviews of different channels, but when you step into just the space of hobbyists, pure hobbyists, you have people who present information in a different way. Some people will focus more on the history of the cards. Others will focus more on the athletes themselves and the careers that they have, or they'll talk more about the current day when the cards came out. There are different ways that we bring our own personalities and perspectives into the hobby that make us distinct. And you got to spend a lot of time going through learning about different channels to understand which channels to watch and which ones to not watch. And who in the world even has that amount of time? Now, we could do it in small groups, but one thing that Mike mentioned to me was that it would be helpful for me to reach out to bigger channels and let them know that I exist so they could give a shout out. And that's a nice idea on paper, but the problem is, like, Mike did give me essentially a shout out for my own channel, The Sports Card Professor. And I'm grateful for that. But I don't think he, even today, has any idea what the channel is like. And there's no reason for him to. He doesn't need to. He doesn't owe me anything, doesn't owe anybody else anything. But that means that my channel is just another name in the grand scheme of YouTube. What is it that's distinct about my channel that it brings? Well, I don't know. I guess somebody has to sit down and go through a bunch of videos and figure out if my channel works. And watching one or two videos, depending on the videos, may completely throw you off. So, my channel obviously is not the only one that's like this. This is a common thing throughout, because there are channels coming up all the time. Every week we get multiple channels that pop up into the space, and nobody has time to sit down and go through all of that. So it's a wonderful idea to get big channels to come out and say, hey, here are some channels you should check out. But why should I've got enough to watch. Why should I go and spend all that time and try to learn about these different channels? I love the idea of having some sort of a place where you can actually get the ability to see some of the diversity in YouTube, because we have so much diversity in terms of how we approach our channels, the subjects that we have, the preferences that we have, and it's possible that we could create something like the Sports Card Hall of Fame network, where that's just kind of a repository for all the all of the co-related Sports Card Hall of Fame channels. Doing something like that, where you could have occasional reviews of channels, or you could have like a monthly look at a number of different channels, something like that, where people could know that it's there and go and check out different options that exist, because there is so much variety in the sports card YouTube space that I expect is there, but I don't see it and I don't hear about it. I mean, for me, I still have a difficult time with the idea that I'm the only person doing what I do. Deep dives into sports card, into different sets in the history of sports cards. I know that 90s b-ball cards does some minor level stuff like that. And so to me, that's the only other channel I've found that does what I do. But why, in all of the 15 or 20 or however many years, why am I the first channel that's done this? I can't believe I'm the first person to do it. I assume there's something out there that I haven't found, and I'd love to know what else is out there, because I know what I've created, and it makes no sense to me that I'm the only person to come up with this idea, or to pursue this idea, or to do it to a large extent, because I understand that there are going to be smaller examples done by various YouTubers, but again, I'd like to know about that. So I'm wondering what else is out there, because there's got to be a lot out there, and it would be helpful, I think, to everybody to have a better visibility of the variety of channels and of contributors to the sports card world in YouTube. And if I had made this channel that was to be dedicated to sports card content, then we could use this channel, or I could use this channel to do it. But this is a channel that's intended to be across all of YouTube videos, so it really wouldn't work very well. So it'd really be best to work in another place. So those are the 3 points I want to make. And there's one other point I want to toss in here, because Mike told me that I need to get better at pitching my own channels, which for me is very difficult. And even now I'm feeling kind of icky just doing this, but I figured let's practice this and say, okay, I'm going to make a pitch and let you know I have 2 YouTube channels, outside of this, 2 sports card channels. One of those channels is the Sports Card Professor, and that's a video where I do channel where I do deep dives into various card sets. I also rank card designs, and I do box reviews. But the other one is the Sports Trading Card Hall of Fame, which is a sports card history channel where I look at individual pieces of the history of sports cards. Something I do seasonally at this point, but those are 2 channels that I love doing, and I'm very passionate about it. So I just wanted to get it out there and, again, practice doing this, because it's really not my kind of thing. So other than that, those are the things I really wanted to bring up and get more into when it comes to the conversation that I had with him, because these are subjects that I think do relate to all of us really well, and it'd be good to try to solve some of these quirks if we could. Other than that, I want to thank you for watching the video, following along, and curious what kind of dialogues will come out as a result of this. So